So today's module is module 16, and it is going to be talking about some network security fundamentals. Now, attacks on a network can be devastating and can result in a loss of time and money due to damage or theft of important information or assets. So intruders have the capability of gaining access to your network through software vulnerabilities, hardware attacks, or through guessing someone's username and password. Intruders who do gain access by modifying software or exploiting software vulnerabilities are referred to as threat actors. So after threat actors do gain access to your network, 4 different types of threats may arise. You have information theft. This is breaking into a computer to obtain confidential information. So somebody gaining access to your computer in order to get sensitive data files, things of that nature, even personal files that you might keep there yourself. Data loss and manipulation is breaking into a computer to destroy or alter data records. So going in there with malicious intent to destroy information that is on that computer itself. So I tell a story all the time when people lose their jobs at CCRI. It's usually on a Friday afternoon. They don't know they're losing their jobs. They all of a sudden have security show up to their office and they are escorted out of the building. By the time they get from their office to their car, or to the front door actually, their entire access to the network has already been wiped out. And they do this, as you know, even though it sounds as cruel as it sounds, they do this so that someone cannot knowingly destroy or manipulate data in any way, shape, or form before they are escorted out of the building due to being fired. Identity theft, hopefully none of you have been aware of this, or not aware of this, a target of this. It is a form of information theft where personal information is stolen for the sole purpose of taking over the identity of someone. And then you have disruption of service, which is preventing legitimate users from accessing servers to which they are entitled. So things like DHCP. So they could do a DHCP threat or a ping sweep and things like that. The whole purpose of those types of threats are to just continually access a service. So if they continuously access a service and they overload the system, valid users who actually need to utilize those servers and such do not have access to it. So that is a disruption of service to valid individuals within your network. So vulnerability is a degree of weakness in a network or device. Some degree of vulnerability is inherent to routers, switches, desktops, servers, and even security devices. Everybody, including the human network, is subject to some type of vulnerabilities. Now, typically your network devices under attack are your endpoints, such as your servers and your desktops. There are 3 primary vulnerabilities or weaknesses that you should be able to be familiar with. First one is technological. These might include things like TCP/IP protocol weaknesses, operating system weaknesses, and network equipment weaknesses. So, again, always testing your TCP/IP protocol stack, operating system weaknesses. If you have applications on your devices that are automatically running at the startup and you don't use these applications or services, disable them or shut them off. Excuse me. By leaving them open, and the fact that you don't even use them, you're not even paying attention to whether or not there is a vulnerability that could be out there for threat actors to get in. Excuse me again. Network equipment weaknesses. Okay, not providing at this juncture, at this level, you are learning about basic, passwords, your line console, which is getting you to manipulate your device, encrypting your passwords, doing a line con AUX if applicable, doing a line VTY password, and then encrypting all of those. So that's your basic level at this juncture. Okay, so best case scenario that you want to do at a very local level or low-key level is passwords. even on your home devices. You get a little router from your from your ISP, and the most you should do, and again, they allow you to do many more things today, but the most that you definitely should do is change the default password and name it so that it's not the default name of just default. Then you have configuration vulnerabilities. These might include unsecured user accounts, system accounts with easily guessed passwords, misconfigured internet services, unsecured default settings, and misconfigured network equipment. Configuration vulnerabilities, that's us. That's the human network, okay? Unless you had your device configured by a business and then purchased it to order, or ordered it to purchased it for your environment, then it would be on them. But most configuration vulnerabilities have to do with us. Security policies. These vulnerabilities might include a lack of a written security policy, politics, lack of authentication continuity, logical access controls not being applied correctly, software and hardware installation changes not following policy, and a non-existent disaster recovery plan. So, every organization should have in writing their own personal security policy, which states what can and cannot be done within the organizational unit. Politics, that's an odd one to talk about, just doing something for sake of politics, so that you're gonna, you want to make sure that what you're doing politically is not incurring any security policy vulnerability. Lack of authentication continuity, making sure that you know who is utilizing your network, what they are doing, and are they allowed to do that. That falls under your logical access controls. So access controls, which you'll learn more about in Cisco 2 or 3, is exactly that. Who am I giving access to and to do what? Software and hardware installation and changes not following policy. So if you get a piece of equipment, say you purchase an older piece of equipment, you went to eBay, you purchased something, first thing you need to be doing is doing your security patches, your operating system updates. Again, those are low-level securities that you can execute. And again, not following policies in a non-existent disaster recovery plan. When a disaster happens, how will your organization recover? You need to have a plan in place. Now, all three of these sources of vulnerabilities can leave a network or device open to various attacks, including malicious code attacks and network attacks. If network resources can be physically compromised, a threat actor can deny the use of network resources. So the 4 classes of physical threats. And again, physical security is not really something that we think of out of the gate. But it is in my opinion, it is the very first level of protecting your network, not having your network resources out in the open. Excuse me. Hardware threats includes physical damage to servers, routers, switches, cabling plant, and your workstations. So again, not giving someone the opportunity to destroy a physical piece of equipment, especially, if you're foolish enough not to have that recovery plan or that backup plan. Environmental threats are going to include things like temperature extremes. It can't be too hot or too cold. Most of your security closets, or networking closets, should be at a 72 type temperature. You cannot have humidity. You cannot have it too wet or too dry. Occasionally you might see on campus where our main distribution facility, which is the room with the big building, the room with the big windows down the hall, occasionally they might have that door open with a big exhaust fan pushing air out because it is just getting too hot in there with all those different types of equipment. Electrical threat. This is going to include voltage spikes, insufficient supply voltage or brownouts, unconditioned power or noise, and total power loss. So remember the 2 different types of interference that we did talk about: electromagnetic and radio frequency. So you shouldn't have your closets or your networking equipment next to fluorescent lights, next to running waters. They should be in a locked environment with a cool temperature. Only the individuals with the key to that room should be the ones that are allowed in that room. You do not want to run electrical and data in the same conduit. You always need to keep them separate. Okay, things of those natures. Have a UPS, uninterrupted power source, in place so that if a brownout does happen, your network does not go down. Something like a backup generator. If your network does go down, can you recover? Or if you lose power, can you recover quickly and get back online? And then maintenance threats. Includes poor handling of key electrical components or electrostatic discharge, lack of critical spare parts, poor cabling, and poor labeling. So like we learned in chapter 4, when you built your cables, you cannot have those 8 cables within that casing be exposed between the casing and the RJ45. You leave them open to exposure. They could get run over by a desk chair, somebody could step on them, they could be broken. If one gets broken, now you do not have 8 bits of information that are traveling that should be traveling. Not having spare parts sounds really foolish, but sometimes it happens. If a monitor goes down in a critical situation and you don't have a backup monitor, you're pretty much dead in the water. So you have to think about all of these things. A good plan for physical security must be created and implemented to address these issues. Now, malware is short for malicious software. It is code or software that is specifically designed to damage, disrupt, steal, or inflict some kind of bad or illegitimate action on data, hosts, or networks. So be familiar with the following types. A worm is a type of malware that will propagate itself by inserting a copy into and becoming part of another program. It spreads from one computer to another, leaving infections as it travels. Worms, very similar to viruses in that they do replicate functional copies of themselves and can cause the same type of damage. However, in contrast, worms are standalone software and do not require a host program or even human interaction in order to propagate. Trojan horses are harmful pieces of software that look legitimate. Unlike viruses and worms, they also do not reproduce by infecting other files. They self-replicate and must spread through user interaction, such as opening an email attachment or downloading and running a file from the internet. Do not open an email that says you won the lottery if you did not play the lottery, or even if you did play the lottery. If something looks suspicious, the email address it came from looks a little funky, delete it and report it as spam. Do not open it. Now, network attacks can be classified into 3 major categories. Reconnaissance, which is the discovery and mapping of your systems, services, or vulnerabilities. Access attacks, which is the unauthorized manipulation of data, system access, or user privileges. Denial of service, again, the disabling or corruption of networks, systems, or services. So for the first one, reconnaissance attacks. External threat actors can use internet tools such as NSLookup and WHOIS utilities to easily determine the IP address space assigned to a given corporation. After that space is determined, a threat actor can then ping the publicly available IP address to identify the addresses that are active. Once they find the active addresses, this can help them automate the next step, which is a threat actor using a ping sweep tool such as fping or gping. This tool will systematically ping all network addresses in a given range or subnet. This is similar to going through a section of a telephone book and calling each number to see who answers. Now, your access attacks. These are going to exploit known vulnerabilities in authentication services such as FTP and web services. And the reason they do this is to gain entry to web accounts, confidential databases, and other sensitive information. Access attacks can be classified in 4 different types. Password attacks, implemented using brute force, Trojan horse, and packet sniffers. Trust exploitation. A threat actor will use unauthorized privileges to gain access to a system, possibly compromising that specific target. Port redirection. A threat actor uses a compromised system as a base for attacks against other targets. As an example, a threat actor using SSH, which is port 22, can connect to a compromised host. Host A is trusted by host B, and therefore the threat actor can then use Telnet port 23, which is a less or not encrypted or secure remote system. It can then use Telnet to access it. Man in the middle. The threat actor is positioned in between 2 legitimate entities in order to read or modify the data that passes between the 2 parties. Now, most times the entities aren't even aware that there is a threat actor in the middle. So what happens is they intercept in between 2 legitimate hosts. So host A will generate a piece of information to host B. The threat actor will get that information. It will then manipulate that information ever so slightly as to not bring attention to host B. Host B will get this, and it will think it's a valid piece of information from host A. Upon its response back to A, the man in the middle again can gain now information about host A and B, now both being vulnerable to threats and attacks. Denial of service attacks. These are the most publicized form of attack and among the most difficult to eliminate. Because of their ease of implementation and potentially significant damage, DOS attacks deserve special attention from security administrators. They take many forms. Ultimately, their whole functionality is to prevent authorized people from using a service by consuming all of the system resources. To help prevent these, it is very important to stay up to date with the latest security updates for your operation systems as well as your applications. These attacks are a major risk because they interrupt communication, and they can also cause significant loss of time and money. They're also very relatively simple to conduct, even by an unskilled threat actor. A DDoS, a directed denial of service, is similar to a DOS, but it will originate from multiple coordinated sources. So a threat actor builds a little tiny network of infected hosts, which are known as your zombies. Now, a network of zombies is referred to as a botnet. So the threat actor uses a command and control, a CNC program, to instruct that botnet of zombies to carry out a DDoS attack. So it releases or instructs this network of zombies, this botnet, to release all at the same time. So in order to mitigate, how do we protect against all of these different things? Number one, your careers that you're in is going to be a non-stop, ever-learning approach to protection. What you're going to learn, it is very much a defense in depth, meaning there is more than one layer to your defense, to your security. So just as you see here alone in this slide, we have multiple different security devices. First and foremost, at a very low level, you have a AAA server. Your AAA server is going to authenticate, authorize, and account for people getting into your devices. So, who are you? Are you allowed to be here? What are you allowed to be doing? And then, how long will you be doing it? Next up, you have an IPS, an intrusion protection system. So an IDS is a sniffer. So it is a sniffer, and it's looking for bogus packets of information. Okay? If it detects it, the only downfall to it is an IPS does not, it can, yes, an IPS does protect. So it first detects a threat, and then it prevents against that threat from happening again. This is different than an IDS. Okay? An IDS is a detection system. It will detect, but will not correct. Now, also at your lower level, you have your switch and router. Okay, where you can put simple access control lists in order to mitigate things. You can also do that at your ASA firewall, so another level. And what you want to take apart from this entire picture here, so also internally, is an ESA, WSA, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and a VPN. Okay, all of these things take place prior to getting out to the internet. Okay, prior to getting out to the internet. So there are several different ways or devices that you can utilize in order to protect your system. Most organizations will employ this defense in-depth approach, also known as a layered approach. This requires a combination of network devices and services working in tandem. So again, some examples: VPNs, ASA firewalls, IPS and IDS, intrusion protection system, and intrusion detection system. ESA and WSA, and then your AAA or TACX, not TACX, your AAA server. Your TACX is a different server. Now, defense in depth. A VPN is a router used to provide secure VPN services with corporate sites and remote access support for remote users using secure encrypted tunnels. Your ASA firewall. This is a dedicated device that is going to provide stateful firewall services. It will ensure that internal traffic can go out and come back, but it will prevent external traffic initiating a connection inside. It will not allow something from the outside in unless it was created from the inside first. An IPS, intrusion prevention system. I said protection, but it's prevention. I do apologize. This monitors incoming and outgoing traffic looking for malware, network attack signatures, and more. If it recognizes a threat, it can immediately stop it. Again, different from IDS, which only detects it. ESA and WSA, email security appliances. These can filter spam and suspicious emails. And then you have the web security appliance, which also filters known and suspicious internet malware sites. And then your AAA server. This server contains a secure database of who is authorized to access and manage network devices. So your network devices authenticate administrative users for using this database. Again, authentication, making sure the user is who they say they are. Authorization, telling that user what they can and cannot do on your network. And accounting, keeping a log while they are on the network for however long they are on the network. Okay, so authorization, accounting, and I do this every time when I try to go back. Authentication. Authentication, accounting. What am I missing? Authentication, accountability, and authorization. Every time I talk about it, I mess it up. Now, backups. I know you've heard about backups your whole entire technological career, but they really are important, even at a very basic level in your own home. Backing up device configurations and data is one of the most effective ways of protecting against data loss. These should be performed on a regular basis as identified in the security policy for the organization. They are usually stored off-site to protect the backup media if anything happens to the main. The table below shows backup considerations and their descriptions. Frequency. Perform backups on a regular basis as identified again by your security policy. Full backups can be time-consuming, therefore you perform them monthly or weekly. With frequent partial backups of changed files. So when you're doing backups, you can do a full backup, you can do an incremental, meaning whenever something changes. You can do a partial, which says only backup what has changed. So there's very many different things or ways that you can set up your backup procedures. Storage, always validate backups to ensure the integrity of the data and validate that the file restoration procedures do actually work. Security, backup should be transported to an approved offsite storage location on a daily, weekly, or monthly rotation as required by the security policy. And validation. Validation should be protected using strong passwords. The password is required to restore the data. Now, a new malware is released, or as new malware is released, enterprises need to keep current with the latest versions of antivirus malware. The most effective ways to do this, again, is to download security updates from the operating system. CCRI does this every Tuesday night at 11 p.m. All of the computers on campuses shut down, updates are pushed out, and then they are restarted and relocked. One solution to the management of critical security patches is to make sure all end systems automatically download updates. So rather than you sit here, something like you would do at home, you would do check for updates yourself on your home computers. I used to do this every Friday night, when everybody in my house went to bed. And then by the time the kids woke up the next morning, everything was already set and done, and they could jump on the machines as could myself and my husband. At very minimal, at least once a month at home. Oh, here we go. Excuse me. I do apologize for my cough. Authentication, authorization, and accounting, or AAA as it's called, is a network security service which provides the primary framework to set up access control on network devices. It is a way to control who is permitted to the access by authenticating them, what actions they can perform while accessing the network by authorizing them, and making a record of what was done while they're there, which is accounting, usually a log file on each particular user in your system. The concept of AAA is similar to the use of a credit card, where the credit card identifies who can use it, so that would be the name on the card. Where the credit card identifies who can use it, how much that user can spend, that is your credit limit, and then keeping an account of what items the user purchases, and that is your list of purchases in your statement. So AAA is very similar to credit cards. Now, network firewalls are going to reside between two or more networks, and they control the traffic between them and help prevent unauthorized access. A firewall could allow outside users controlled access to specific services. So, for example, servers accessible to the outside users are usually located in what we specify as a demilitarized zone, a DMZ. Your DMZ, even though it is out there and it does require a public IP address, it is still protected by your firewall. Okay, so it is out there, it's protected by your firewall, as is your inside network, as you see here. Okay, so your firewall, again, will permit traffic from users in the inside network to exit from the inside, and then as long as it was generated from the inside, they will automatically be let back in. It will deny outside traffic from just randomly, and again, of course, we're talking idealistic situations, from just randomly generating traffic to try to get into your network. And then again, we have specialized circumstances where we need to have public IP addresses because we want our web page to be discoverable by outsiders, but we also need to protect them, so we put them in the demilitarized zone. Now, firewall products come packaged in various forms. These products use different techniques for determining what will be permitted or denied access to your network. They can include the following: packet filtering. This can prevent or allow access based on IP or MAC addresses. Application filtering is going to prevent or allow access by specifying application types based on port numbers. So again, reiterating the fact on how important it is for you to understand your applications, services, and their associated port numbers. Port numbers are just, think of port numbers as a piece of, or firewall as a piece of Swiss cheese, right? You have all these open holes. Well, if you want to allow a service, you keep that hole open. If you don't want to allow a service, you need to plug that hole and stop it from being utilized. So this is what your ACLs do, and you'll learn about your access controllers the further along you go. At the distribution layer, your ACLs are checked statement by statement. And so if someone is trying to get in to utilize a particular service, the ACL first says, well, hey, is that individual or network even allowed permission to get to that service? Okay, if so, then that port is open. If not, then that port in the firewall is closed. URL filtering. This is going to prevent or allow access to websites based on specific URL or keywords. Think about those things that we've talked about or you might have heard about before. Okay, referred to as whitelists and blacklists. So your whitelists would be a list of websites that are allowed. Okay, your blacklists obviously websites that are not allowed. Now things can happen and unintentionally that are not allowed. Such as when I was in a previous position at the college, part of my position was to do purchasing for the department. And, oh, actually, it was for my same position I'm in now. I do apologize. And so I kept trying to get a quote from a company to purchase a product. Company kept telling me, they've sent it. And I kept telling them, calling them and telling them, I'm not getting a quote. I don't know where you're sending it. Well, what happens is, and what we don't know as lay people, just figuring this stuff out, a lot of times what your ISPs do is they do a one-to-many. So here is your ISP, let's say. Your ISP is taking this bandwidth and it is splitting it up. Company 1, Company 2, company 3, and they're splitting it up. Now, without getting into too much detail at this juncture, this is what ISPs will do or can do. So what happened in my circumstance, and what can happen, again, not maliciously, is company 2 sent a bogus email. My server guy here said, whoa, 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 on this one link, which is the bandwidth, on that one link coming into me had something bogus. So what do you think they do? They shut down the entire link. So my company was company 1. So because company 2 did something malicious, companies 1, 2, and 3 are shut down. So I went to my server guy and I said, listen, Peter, this company keeps telling me they're sending a quote. Are you blocking this company's URL? And sure enough, that's what it was. And so he had to release that and populate it onto the whitelist so that I could get my quotes from that company. Now, endpoint security. An endpoint or a host is an individual computer system or device that acts as a network client. So common endpoints, as we've learned so far, laptops, desktops, servers, smartphones, tablets, etc. Securing these devices is one of the most challenging jobs of network administrators because it involves human nature. Your company must have a well-documented policy in place, and employees must be aware of these rules. If you were to go to CCRI's IT departmental website, you would see all their listed policies in place for everything within this organization. Employees need to be trained on proper use of the network. Again, every so often there will be an email that gets popped out either from a security downstairs with security policies with regard to their domain, or from IT saying make sure you understand these are the policies within CCRI, or even from our personnel department. Okay, so these things have to be well documented policies that are put in place. Every organization should have them. Policies will often include the use of antivirus software and host intrusion prevention. More comprehensive endpoint security solutions are going to rely on network access control. Now, Cisco, of course, has to populate and throw their stuff out there, so this is a little device called the Cisco Auto Secure. The security settings are set to the default values when a new operating system is installed on a device. In most cases, this level of security is inadequate. So for Cisco routers, the Cisco Auto Secure feature can be used to assist in securing the system. In addition, there are some simple steps that you should take that apply to most operating systems. Default usernames and passwords should be changed immediately. When you get a little router at home from your ISP, today it is what we call a integrated services router, meaning it does wireless, it does wired, and it does a whole bunch of other things that you would do in a production router. It acts as a switch and a router because it gives you, for the most part, it's like 4 or 5 ports besides the uplink so that you can plug other devices into it. So it's giving you all these capabilities. So usually the name of that is default. So every home router or every router you purchase from a store within its documentation has an IP address that belongs to that router. I think Linksys was 192.168.0.1. So if you were to browse to that particular IP address, that gets you in to configure your device. So one of the things you're going to find out right now, you've learned about physically connecting to your device with your console cable in order to get in there and manipulate. You've learned about Telnet and SSH in order to remotely get in, but you can also browse if you know the IP address of your device, you can browse into it. Okay, so your little home routers that most people don't think they can touch because it doesn't belong to them, it's the ISPs. Your ISP does allow you to do certain functionalities. And the only way to find that out is, I believe, and I would assume that all of them do this, I certainly know that mine does, which is Verizon. On the back of your device, it has the default name, it has the IP address that you can web browse into, and it has the default password, which you should definitely go in and change. You should definitely go in there and name your network. Okay, put some kind of security on it. They offer you different types of, even if you don't know what WPA is, it's an authentication program. Click it, turn it on, protect yourself. Also, any unnecessary services and applications should be turned off and uninstalled when possible. Don't leave applications and services open, either on the stop menu or just in general. If you're not going to utilize them, delete them from your system. Often devices shipped from the manufacturer have been sitting in a warehouse for a long period of time. And so they will not have the most up-to-date patches installed, even if you buy something from eBay. Okay, it's not going to have the most current patches installed, and this is probably coming from somebody who has the knowledge that they should probably do that before they sell it to an individual. Do it yourself once you get it. It is important to update any software and install any security patches prior to implementation. Passwords. Again, I'm not going to delve deeply into this. We all know by now that passwords should be a certain length. They should be at least 8 characters to 10 characters. You want them complex by including a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, symbols, and spaces, if allowed. Avoid passwords based on repetition, common dictionary words, letters or number sequences, usernames, relatives or pet names, biological information such as birth dates, ID numbers, ancestor names, or other easily definable pieces of information. Deliberately misspell a word. See the example Smith here. Excuse me. Do not write passwords down. And leave them in obvious places such as your desktop, your monitor, or taped to the back of your keyboard. On Cisco routers, understand that leading spaces are ignored for passwords, but spaces after the first character are not. Therefore, be careful when you're creating these. When you create a phrase made of many words, it is referred to as a passphrase. But then again, be careful with this. If you create a very long passphrase, once it's encrypted, you get a very long string of encrypted characters. So be wise, but be frugal. Additional password security. So there are several steps that you have learned about. So service password encryption. Again, it will encrypt every plain password that is currently on your device and every password that is created going forward. Set a minimum acceptable password length with the security password minimum length command. Deter brute fast password guessing attacks with the login block for number of attempts, number within, number of seconds. So here I am blocking for 120 attempts, 3 of which within 60 seconds. Disable inactive privilege exec mode access after a specified amount of time with your executive timeout. You also want to specify your transport input. If you only want security, then you're going to allow SSH. If you're in an internal environment just doing lab work, because every organization will have a testing lab, if you're just testing within your own organizational lab, you could use Telnet. But here is where you could specify one, the other, or both. So again, the command above will block all connections to the router for 120 seconds if the credentials are entered incorrectly 3 times within a span of 60 seconds. Enable SSH. It is possible to configure a Cisco device to support SSH using the following steps. You need to create a unique device hostname. A device must have a unique hostname other than the default configuration IP. You also need to configure the IP domain name. So all these steps on this slide are essential to SSH. You need to generate a key to encrypt your SSH traffic. SSH encrypts traffic between source and destination. However, to do so, a unique authentication key must be generated using the global configuration command crypto key generate RSA, general keys, and then pick a modulus type. So your modulus bits determine the size of the key and can be configured from 360 bits to 2048 bits. The larger the bit value, the more secure the key. However, a larger bit value also takes longer to encrypt and decrypt information, so it's going to put a little bit more latency in your system. The minimum recommended modulus length is 1024. Verify or create a local database entry. You create a local database username entry using the username global configuration command. You authenticate against the local database. So you need to populate with the login local to authenticate the VTY line against the local database. And then you're going to enable VTY inbound by using that transport import, either SSH or Telnet or both. Again, disable unused services. Cisco routers and switches start with a list of active services that may or may not be required by your network. Disable any unused services to preserve system resources, such as your CPU cycles and your RAM, and to prevent threat actors from exploiting these services. The type of services that are on by default will vary depending on the iOS version. So, for example, iOS XE typically will have only HTTPS and DHCP ports open. You can verify this with the show IP ports all command. iOS versions prior to iOS XE, you will use the show control plane host open ports. So make sure you do take a look around, see what's open in your system, and close what you're not utilizing, just like you know now to do on your switches. Whatever ports are not being utilized on your switch, you shut them down. So that is your basic overview of security, network security within this module, within this course. These topics you will elaborate on extensively the further along you go.